Right, hello everybody and welcome to the wonderful world of football shirts. Usually weekly podcast, but today I am joined, well no it's not, it's different because it's a video. Look, it's me. I am joined today by my friend Mark, not Mark who does the podcast, but a special Mark. Mark works for Mammoth Brewery, who I've come down to visit today. And we're going to talk about football shirts and we're going to talk about beer.
Yeah.
Good.
Sounds good.
Yeah, sounds good. Right, so first of all, why don't we start by introducing Mammoth Brewery?
Yeah.
Why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Sorry to correct you, the name's technically Mammoth Beer.
Sorry.
So I apologise, it's very awkward. We've been brewing in London since, it'll be 2 years in January. We started brewing. We were one of those clever people that decided to start a business in the middle of a pandemic, especially one that involves lots of pubs. It was an interesting first 6 months, and then the pubs opened. Since then we've been growing. We've got a tap room now in Leytonstone. And I've been brewing in London for technically about 8 years. So I'm a London brewer through and through, and that is the case still.
Cool, and how did we meet?
We met on the cold, harsh, wintry plains of Wanstead Flats, I believe, when we both had more hair, it's probably fair to say.
Yeah.
Probably about 15 years ago. Is that about right?
That's about right.
I think I was 18 when I met you, and I'm 33 now, so yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So we goalkeeper and jack of all trades.
Anywhere.
Building our trade together.
Yeah.
I think we've got quite a few photos of you holding onto a post, haven't we?
Mm-hmm.
Marking corners.
Yeah, I was normally left back or right back, and that was always a photo opportunity.
Yeah, and you started making beer for the football team, didn't you?
Yeah. I started off as a home brewer, so I was at uni, had way more spare time than I knew what to do with. Should I be looking at you or looking at the camera?
Whatever.
Okay. Actually, I'll look at you. It feels better, doesn't it? Started off at uni, I had way more spare time than I knew what to do with, and then my friends texted me one day and was like, I bought a book on how to make beer, which just seemed absurd at the time, and we made a beer together and it actually tasted okay, and I thought, well, fuck it, this is quite fun. And then that grew into, when I'd left uni, I was like, I think that's what I want to do for a career.
Nice.
Started working in pubs for 2 or 3 years, and then eventually got my first professional job, that's what I've done ever since, really.
Cool, happy with that.
Yeah.
So the plan here is we're going to try some beers and let you guys know what they're like, and then there'll be a link somewhere, and then in between we'll talk about some football shirts, and you came up with a really good suggestion, which is obviously on the theme of beer, football shirts that have alcoholic mainly beer sponsorships.
Yeah.
And then just kind of what shirts you liked growing up and what kind of shirts you're into now.
Yeah.
So why don't we start with my favourite?
Yeah, let's go for it. I've already started on a little lager just to wet my whistle.
What have we got here?
So this is a coffee stout. It's called Aguacatones. It's 5.5%. It's called Aguacatones because that is the name of the coffee that's in it, and it's made with real coffee. And it's actually from Guatemala, and the name of the farm where the beans are grown is also called Aguacatones. We did it in collaboration with a London-based coffee roastery called Plot, who are based in Woolwich, and they told us that they just named their beans after the farms where they're from, and we thought, well, why not carry on that trend? And it's easier to do that than come up with a new name sometimes.
That's fair enough. I have to say that last Christmas I did buy a good box of this and drank it very quickly.
Yeah.
So it's a big favourite of mine. So what am I looking for when you're enjoying a breakfast stout, or in this particular a stout in general? What kind of notes are you looking for when you're drinking it?
So, obviously this is a coffee beer, so you should be getting some coffee. And it's a personal peeve of mine if I buy something that says rhubarb on it and it doesn't taste or smell like rhubarb, then I'm like, there should be a big whack of coffee in there. We put a lot of coffee in. Works out about a teaspoon of coffee per pint.
Okay.
So it will give you a caffeine buzz as well. And I found that out the hard way when we were making it. I was drinking it a lot. I'm quite sensitive to caffeine. I was getting a bit shaky throughout the day.
Is that a bit like when you're a kid, or when you're a teenager and you're doing vodka Red Bulls?
Yeah.
The vodka's making you really sleepy and the Red Bull's making you
it is it's a bit like a beery espresso martini, really. The breakfast element refers to the amount of oats in it, and what the oats should do is round the body off, smooth off some of the bitterness, make it almost a bit lighter, kind of think like oat milk, kind of similar effect. that it has in beer. Same thing. But then obviously, oh no, no.
Director says no.
Yeah. But then also it's a stout, so you should be getting lots of roasted flavours anyway from the dark malts that give it the colour. But you should be getting sort of like a bit of bitterness from that. You should be getting maybe a little bit of astringency and dryness. But yeah, lots of like dark chocolate flavours as well. Maybe a bit of roastedness, like not quite burnt, but a bit, you know.
You don't want burnt.
You don't want burnt.
I know what you mean though. Yeah. Nice
yeah.
kind of roastiness. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
It is delicious.
Great, thank you.
So whilst I'm drinking this,
There's plenty more. So
yeah,
drink with reckless abandon.
Whilst we let's talk about the first football shirt that you thought of when you when you think about football shirts and beers. What are your go-to thoughts?
Yeah.
And you said one straight away. You said you're wearing it. I think you might be.
I am wearing it.
Here we
I am
go.
wearing it. I'm going to unveil it. Give it the grand unveiling. I'm pretty sure this isn't an original retro one.
Doesn't
I think
matter.
It doesn't matter. There might be some connoisseurs. It is a Newcastle shirt with the Newquay Brown emblem, which is just, I think they haven't done a shirt as good as that since they got rid of the Newquay Brown, really.
No.
Despite being a Londoner, I grew up a Newcastle fan. Or I didn't quite. There's a bit of a story behind that. Maybe I'll tell you later.
You can tell us now.
I can tell you now if you want. So, my first ever football shirt was the Man United season when they had 4 kits. They had the blue and white, they had the grey,
Yeah.
they had the red home, and then they had the black away.
Yeah.
And I was probably 4, and I supported Man U because they were the best.
You're so young.
Yeah. And for obvious reasons, my mum, when I said I want that Man U kit, my mum was like, I'm not spending like 40 quid on a 4-year-old's
Yeah,
Man
no,
U
fair
kit.
enough.
But her being very lovely, she went to the local like PE kit shop or like school uniform shop. She bought a black shirt, a plain one, and then she got a Man United badge and stuck it on.
Love that.
And it looked kind of similar. It looked pretty good, and I was really happy with it. And I wore it all the time. And she got it in a size that was way too big because I think she was like, well, if I'm doing it once, that's it. You're getting it for 2 or 3 years. And then that season, my dad was a Tottenham fan. Tottenham beat Man U 4-1, so you can probably date check that. I think it's 1995. And he took the piss so bad that my parents found this kit at the bottom of the stairs with a note on it saying "put in the bin." And I was like, I'm done with Man United now. I'm done with them because I couldn't handle losing to my dad's team. And second in the table were Newcastle, and that's literally how I ended up a Newcastle fan. There's no, I wish I had a romantic story like my granddad worked up in Newcastle or something. I've got no relation to Newcastle whatsoever, other than that I picked them when I was 5.
I kind of think that's a bit romantic.
I've stuck with them.
You stuck to it.
Yeah, I'm a failed glory hunter. I backed the wrong horse in 1995.
I love the idea though. That's right. Like at the time, I always remember my father-in-law, who's a Spurs fan. His first game, I think he said, was an Arsenal game, and at the time it was like, do I pick Arsenal or do I pick Spurs?
Yeah.
And it's like he picked Spurs. Kind of the wrong choice.
Yeah. Again, back the wrong horse a little bit. I mean, Newcastle have had their moments maybe, but nothing compared to maybe like, if I'd waited 3-4 years for the 1999 treble, I would have been pretty happy with that. But...
So, talk to me about this shirt in particular.
Yeah.
What do you like?
I mean, to me, it's just when I think of Newcastle, this is the kit I think of. I almost grew up at that age thinking that this sponsor was just part of the kit.
Yeah.
Because it says Newcastle on it, and I didn't really know what Newcastle Brown Ale was probably when I was 5, but I remember the year they changed it. I think it was NTL was the first time they didn't have Newquay Brown on in like basically my life, and I was like, "The hell is this?" And it just didn't make sense to me. But also, I really like this collar. I think I'm a big fan of the.
I feel like at the
lack
time,
of collar.
Yeah, Adidas were making it, and at the time, it's quite a unique style shirt, especially the colours as well. The colours were very foreign.
Yeah.
Like it's not what we were used to.
No.
And I think
they brought a sort of similar one back a couple of seasons ago. Was it last season? But again, it just had a sort of Chinese betting company on the front. It just doesn't really have the same pizzazz. But yeah, no, I think I really like colours. I'm a big fan of hoops, which I think we were chatting about yesterday briefly on WhatsApp. But yeah, when I picture this kit, I think of obviously Shearer, but I'm also thinking of like Ginola, Les Ferdinand, even like Warren Barton.
Faustino
Asprilla. I'm not sure if he might have been too late for this kit.
No, fair enough.
I think he might have been too late, but yeah, definitely there was some. You might get a Darren Peacock in it.
Isn't it? Because that's the thing though, with that Newcastle team at the time, they're so iconic, weren't they? They had absolute heroes and legends in there at the time.
Yeah.
Cult heroes, whatever you want to call them.
Yeah.
So I can understand it, and I think there's a lot of people that love that shirt, be it Newcastle fan or not.
Yeah.
And the sponsor is great because you go back a few years, it was just the star.
Yeah, yeah.
And I kind of miss that element on football shirts sometimes. That sponsors seem to be really loud and busy, and that was just a nice little star. And again, you've said it. It's got Newcastle in it because that's like the skyline in the star.
They're also, I don't think there needs to be necessarily such a good link. I mean, this is, I would argue, one of the best sponsor links there's been in my lifetime. Anyway, it's like so perfect. But even if you think of like a really good Arsenal team, you probably think of them with O2 or Sega on the front. And there's a kind of association. Whereas now, if I went through the Premier League teams, half of them I probably couldn't name the sponsor because it would just be like bet91.com or something, and you're just like,
and it'll change every 2 or 3
and
years.
it changes quickly, and there's no interesting design. There's nothing. Whereas at least even if or like Liverpool saying Carlsberg on the front, again, that's just sticks in your minds really clearly.
I think you're right. Like that late 90s period, you could probably name almost every team sponsor because they didn't change.
Yeah, we'd have a good stab at it anyway. Yeah, much more. I'd back myself more those teams than nowadays.
Fair enough. You mentioned it as well. We've got Liverpool, who during that 90s period had Carlsberg.
Yeah.
And I joke with you, it's like one of the best sponsors on a football kit, but also then the worst beer.
Yeah. I mean, Newquay Brown for me as a beer drinker, when I first started homebrewing and I first started considering myself falsely a bit of a connoisseur, in Tesco Express, Newquay Brown was probably the most interesting beer you could get. And with this sort of false like loyalty to it through this shirt, I'd buy it a lot anyway. But because we were students, we were quite skint, so we'd start off on 2 Newquay Browns because they were a bit more expensive, and then we'd go on to Heineken because it was always like £1 a can or whatever, which it isn't now obviously. But yeah, those are the days. 6 for 5, 8 for 6.
Nice,
you don't get that anymore. But yeah, but Carlsberg has always been a pretty dreadful beer, to be honest.
And not necessarily about the beer, but they just kind of came at the same time with like iconic Adidas kits as well, didn't they? We're thinking about those kind of 3 stripes over the shoulder in Liverpool days.
Yeah.
That massive, off-white one they wore as well.
I think of also that the green and white checkered one, like the 4 quadrant one. I think that was the FA Cup final kit, wasn't it? Was that 95, 96?
It's good, yeah. Eric Cantona scored.
Yeah.
The cream suits.
That's probably one of the first finals I remember as well, actually. So that's probably dating myself a little bit there, about 95, 96. I remember watching that on TV and thinking, this is really boring.
We have no facts. It's just conjecture, guesswork. We have no facts.
Yeah.
We might get him wrong.
It's from my old man memory, yeah.
Okay.
Might be some inaccuracies.
So, let's put this to one side.
Yeah.
I'm going to drink that in a bit.
Yeah.
Let's move on to our next one. What have we got next?
We've got a sour, we've got a lager. Which way do you fancy going?
Let's go sour.
Let's go sour? All right. So this one's called Duality. It's a sour, which literally, as the name suggests, I don't know if you want to drink out of my sippy cup.
It's okay.
You can have the can. I've already put my lips on this, so.
I think we've done some work.
Yeah, we've actually done so. Yeah. Maybe we'll tell that story. Well, God, you throw me right off there. So yes, it's a sour beer. As the name suggests, it is literally sour to taste. It's got blackberry in it as well, and it's a style of sour called a Goza, which originates from a town in Germany called Gossen, which had sort of slightly salty groundwater. So what it meant was when they brewed beer, it was slightly salty beer.
Yeah.
It's not salty like seawater. It's just a touch of salt.
I've had sour beers before, but that one, you know in that episode of The Simpsons when Homer Simpson tries the most sourest sweet.
Oh yeah, and his face.
That's how I just felt then.
Yeah,
it's a good feeling. It's good.
It's funny because I think the name sour puts people off immediately, but it's quite palate cleansing. It's quite refreshing. It's very good in summer. Certainly, it's only 3.9% as well, so it's really sessionable.
Yeah, really.
You can drink a lot more of it than you think you can on the first sip once you settle into it, and to the point where I go to Belgium. I've been to Belgium like 3 times because I'm a big fan of sour beers. Hey, it's only on the boat. It's not that far. Last time I went, I took a pack of Rennies with me because I knew I was going to be blitzing so much sour. And the time before I went, I was going to bed like really acidy stomach. I was like, I've got to take some Rennies with me.
Nice.
I'm such a sour fan. So yeah, we've always got at least one sour in our range. We've got one on our bar at the minute, which is in Leytonstone if anyone's local. It's a peach and raspberry sour. It's 6%, so we've kind of got both ends of the spectrum covered, like a sessionable one and a strong one. And it's called Duality because it's fermented. Most beers are fermented with one strain of yeast. This is fermented with a yeast and a bacteria. and the bacteria produces lactic acid, which is the sourness that you're tasting. So it's like a duality of
again,
fermentation.
it's such, you're right, I didn't think about it, it's such a palate cleanser, but a refreshing
Yeah,
beer.
it doesn't really have much linger on it. It just cuts through and then it's gone.
You say that the sourness is there, it's really but it's not too overwhelming.
No.
You're right, it does put people off. I think it maybe might, if I was to go into a bar and not know anything about it would put me off.
The name sour immediately intimidates people, but one thing I've found is most people, when they say I don't like beer, which happens, and I do some shifts at the bar, so I meet these people, I immediately reach for a sour, and I don't tell them what it is, I just go, try that. And more often than not, they like it, because when someone says I don't like beer, that normally means someone gave me lager when I was 15 and I didn't like it, or someone keeps trying to give me lager once a year and I don't like lager. So they just think they don't like all beer because they assume lager is the easiest beer to get into, which it's not necessarily. It's, lager's more bitter than a lot of beers, so if you don't like bitterness, then you're going to be put off at the first hurdle, So yes, and I did a sour tasting once where this woman got dragged along by some guy who was beer obsessive. She didn't like any beer. She tried the first sour in the range and was like, "Oh, this is disgusting." And I said to her, like, "You're gonna have a really terrible evening, because they're only getting more extreme as they go." And by the end of the session, the last beer, which even the beer nerds were struggling with, she was like, "Oh, I love that one," and it was like a 30 quid bottle of beer, and I was like, "There you go, it's all yours." Like no one else is appreciating it. So you just never know. You never know. You've just got to try things and see what you like. But yeah, no, sour beers, I'm all about.
Beer and football shirts aren't too dissimilar in that sense, because we've got some crazy football shirts.
Yeah.
And speaking of crazy football shirts, another shirt, a theme of football shirt we were talking about yesterday, is Mexico.
Yeah. It was funny actually. I was doing a bit of research yesterday and I didn't realise I had such an affinity for green football shirts, but every time I thought of a kit that I liked, there was so many green shirts. There was that one, the Mexico kit, was it 88? I think it was when I googled it yesterday. It had like, it looks to me like the Mayan calendar. That's what that image is,
Aztec,
I believe. The Aztec calendar, yeah. But sort of like on a sort of two-tone effect. I think any kit with that sort of detail on it, where there's a bit of a story to it, that's maybe where sometimes England shirts for me miss out a little bit, because they're so plain. It's hard to weave in any sort of narrative. Whereas Mexicans, definitely the Nigerian kits I was looking at yesterday, so many good shirts they've done, so many good shirts. And I think it was the Mexico away kit this year, the pink one. You're saying
No, so this was last year's Mexico's home kit. So for the first time they changed from green to pink, which actually is not too dissimilar to this can here.
Yeah.
And so again, you talk about the history and the story of it, and just a bit out there, a bit wacky.
Yeah, exactly.
And you can remember, again, I mean, France 98, you might have just been old enough to remember Mexico in that World Cup with those kind of shirts, and it looked really weird, didn't it? Because even at that time, I remember France 98, there were no crazy weird shirts, were there?
No. If anything, I think more as it went towards the noughties, it became a bit of a trend to get even more plain. And do you remember there was that England shirt that was literally just white, like completely white? And I remember sitting in the pub the first game that they played in that kit, and 9 out of 10 people were like, I really don't like it. And I was kind of sitting there thinking, well, who's this for then? Like, everyone's kind of agreeing this shirt's really tedious. There was like 1 or 2 people like, oh no, I get it, I really like it, it's the simplicity. But I don't know, I think I like a shirt with a bit more to it, to be honest.
Yeah.
Especially if your shirt's white as well.
You are always stuck with white on you, but because even think about, if you remember 2002, 2004, Nike had this Total 90 kit, which Arsenal had, Man United had, Barcelona had, Holland had, Brazil had, every team that wore Nike, and Portugal had it. It had a little circle in the middle that had the number in there. Every team had it. Took away all identity of football teams whatsoever. And actually, I feel like this World Cup is one of the first in quite a while in which we've seen teams wearing slightly strange different shirts. Did you see the Belgium one?
Not off the top of my head, no.
Do you remember when you were a kid and you wanted to look cool and you said, Mum, can you buy me that kind of black bowling shirt that's got flames coming up? That's exactly what it looks like.
No, I don't think I actually watched the Belgian game. I'm glad I missed out on that. That sounds ridiculous.
For a bit of context, we are filming this during the World Cup. The World Cup might have finished by the time this comes out, but. All right,
I can't believe England won.
Yeah. Oh wow! Who thought that he would have scored that goal at that moment? Connor Cody, Wolves hero.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but no, that's it. I think I think it's a kind of a trend again, maybe linking beer and football. There's this bit in. I'm going on a massive segue here, but stay with me. There's that line in the film Fight Club, it's probably in the book, I haven't read it, where he basically says like he's got these IKEA glasses and he's got these bubbles in it that show the imperfections, that show the fingerprints of how it's made.
Yeah.
And that's why he's paid more for them. And that, to me, is basically describes culture for the next 20 years after that film, where people want to see the fingerprint, they want to see the identity now. And I think that's certainly happening in craft beer. It doesn't cut it anymore to walk into a Tesco Express and just have Carlsberg or Heineken or Yuki Brown. It doesn't cut it anymore to just have Nescafe. You want a proper espresso, you want to know where the beans are from. And I think it's the same as in football kits. It doesn't really cut it anymore just to have a generic Nike design. You want to be like, well, you're Portuguese, why would you not have some sort of thing on your kit that is slightly Portuguese about it? Which makes total sense. But I think big companies have finally cottoned onto that. And they're very good at copying what people want or giving people what they don't realise they want yet and then supplying it. But certainly, yeah, there's, even in the way that Qatar's advertised, just every channel has these little Qatari sort of, probably quite generic Middle Eastern details and all the advertising. But it's a wider trend, and it makes sense because me and you are both like, yeah, that's better.
Yeah.
That's what we want.
Exactly. It's fascinating though, because at the same time, I was reading an interview with someone who designs Nike kits maybe, and they always say football comes first. So as long as the kit is wearable for a player, everything else comes afterwards.
Right.
Whereas, but then like they are taking on that element, as you said, about making it a bit more relevant to the current team or country.
Yeah.
Whereas like 5-10 years ago, it probably was just, this is a player shirt and this is all it will ever be.
Yeah.
Do you remember those Italian Kappa shirts that were skin tight?
I was just thinking about that, weirdly, as you said that. I was probably about 12 and I went into like a sports shop in my hometown and they had it discounted and I got it way too big for me, so I still have it. Nice. And I think it's only got 2 stars on it. It's like that old.
Yeah.
But it was so big for me, it wasn't skin tight. But now I wear it, it's not quite the Italian way of wearing it. And it's definitely stretched over the years. But that was a pretty cool shirt. I quite like that.
I always remember that Fulham had Kappa shirts at the same time. And my friend, who's a Fulham fan, is slightly larger. I was like, this shirt is not made for larger people.
No. It's not a good look. But yeah, especially with like the rugby jerseys as well. You get people wearing them. And you're just like, it looks good on someone in the who's a centre or a winger, but someone in the front row wearing the same shirt shouldn't really be going down that way.
Right. What have we got next?
Apart from choking, so the last one is a lager. It's a very, maybe a bit generic way to finish.
Oh, we all like lager.
Who doesn't like lager? It's a lager called Prism. It's made with German yeast, which is pretty traditional for lager. Just going to rinse my glass the brewer's way. German yeast, which is very traditional for lager. It's got Slovenian hops in it. Generally, Central European hops would be considered quite traditional as well. It's a medium to low bitterness, which, if anyone is like a bit of a beer nerd, somewhere between a Helles and a Helles and a Pilsner. Not quite as hoppy as a Pilsner.
Okay.
Yeah, a Helles is a sort of like a breadier lager, and a Pilsner's typically a slightly more hoppy, more bitter.
Learning.
Yeah.
Always learning. I like that.
This one's meant to be down the middle. So, not in my opinion, I'm thinking if I'm making a lager, it's a crowd pleaser, right? You're not trying to reinvent the wheel, not trying to do anything too wacky. I think most people who drink lager, they just kind of want a lager,
But you want something different as well. Like, I don't want to. You go to the pub and you don't. There are nuances to them, but Heineken, Carlsberg, Foster's, Corona, but they're all relatively the same. You want to have something a little bit different. So if I can go and have something that's noticeably different.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, at the end of the day, we're still a small brewery. Our processes are going to demand that we do things in a different way anyway. Most mass-produced lagers, they will be produced in between 3 and 8 days, very, very quick. Whereas traditionally, the word lager means store in German, and that's the origin of lager. It's when they brewed beer, they stuck it in barrels, they put it in caves or they put it in cellars, and then they realised that the longer they left it, the better it tasted, because it basically matures the beer and it sort of settles all the sort of spikes and the rough edges. It smooths them out as you store it.
Delicious.
So the point of a lager is to be made slow and cold. So you drink something like a Foster's that says lager on it. It's lager by name, not really by design. It's not really produced in the way that a lager would be. Like a proper German brewer would cry if they saw the inside of most big production facilities and that's not just in England. That's everywhere. But yeah, with us, we just by virtue of making lager in a proper way, like I said, with the fingerprints on it, you can kind of taste the difference. That we're actually putting in real hops for starters.
Yeah, that's always
rather
good.
Rather than an extract.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
But before we move on, I just want to talk really quickly about the artwork.
Oh yeah.
What's the artwork all about? So I'll show you.
So actually, those 3 are all done by a friend of ours, a local artist called Dan Jinsey. He's credited on the can and on our website. But yeah, so the story behind him, because my business partner's background's in audio, he does music for film trailers and stuff like that. So there's always meant to be a rough kind of audio crossover, but not in a sort of shouty, cheesy way. But the artwork for Duality is meant to look like a sort of it's meant to look like a sound wave sort of coming out of a speaker, but it's also meant to look like blackberry because there's blackberries in it. The Algoritonies is meant to look like a sort of image of sound waves travelling, and then the artwork for Prism is a bit of a funny story actually. It was originally meant to be called Lucky, and so it's got a 7-pointed star on it, but then there was another brewery with a beer called Lucky, so we had to change the name. But we realised as we were making it and we were designing the logo or the label, it's kind of very reminiscent of like the Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon sort of thing. So we realised there was a bit of a link there, and we were like, okay, so we can call it Prism because it kind of looks like a light beam shining through a prism coming out of the side. I don't know if you can see on that, it's kind of holographic as well, so you get this when the light hits it, it looks really...
If I'm any good at video editing, there's a picture just here. Oh wow, look at that.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I love the artwork itself. I think because that's another thing that comes with craft beers at the moment, is the artwork separates it so much from your standards, and I feel that, oh my god, the similarity between football shirts and beer is never ending, because at the moment there is a trend, especially in the football shirt community, that smaller clubs, insignificant clubs are getting real big recognition because they've got incredible shirts.
Yeah.
I myself have bought a flipping Queen's Park shirt. They're a kind of lower league Scottish team, sponsored by Iron Brew. Yeah. And I'll show you a picture of it. They've got a picture here. Look at that shirt, isn't it great? Their away shirt is made up of a selection of dots, and the dots denote their entire history of wins, losses and draws. So it's red for a loss, orange for a draw and green for a win. So it's, and then Iron Brew across the chest, and it's just like, I would never ever ever have bought a shirt from them, but you get drawn in by the artwork, which relates to beer, because the artwork on beer is...
I mean, it kind of annoys me now when design isn't good, not because I'm sort of like really anal about those sorts of things. It's more like there's so many underpaid artists in the world. There's just the thing I always think to myself is there's just no excuse for it anymore. There's no excuse to just have a rubbish beer label or a rubbish. There's no reason for that to ever happen. Like, especially if you're a football team or a big brewery, so many people do it for free who are really talented. There's just no need. There's absolutely no excuse to have some piss poor design.
Just for kind of like clarity's sake, we are next to a school, and it's just turned school home time, so there's children hitting each other with sticks and running around. So if that's the noise you can hear, that's the noise you can hear, whilst we're just drinking beers and tugging at football shirts. Okay,
it's the new face of Hackney.
Yeah, well, yes, Hackney Wick is where we are. I forgot to say that at the beginning.
Yeah.
Right. And so, okay, so then let's talk about some more different football shirts. What about some more bespoke football shirts with...
There was, I don't know if you guys picked it up, there was the big viral one from Clapton Community Football Club
Yes.
a couple of years ago. So that's, I think, kind of similar to the Queen's Park shirt you're saying. That was, I believe they put out like a sort of a call out for designers, and then they picked through like a sort of tournament system.
I tried to submit one for that.
Oh, really?
Failed miserably.
Ah, shit. Oh, right. Well, I mean, the winner justified its, it went viral, right? I kind of vaguely know someone who was involved in it at the time, and he said he went to bed one night and woke up with like 2,000 orders for this football shirt and was like, what the hell is going on? And it had gone mad because it was to do with the Spanish Revolution, wasn't it? The British troops going over to fight Franco. And I believe in Spain it's still so political that people in Spain don't really talk about that sort of thing, don't really engage in that conversation. So it took a foreigner to be like, oh, we're completely unaware of how delicate this is, just going to do a football shirt about it.
I have told the story on the podcast before, but I'll tell you, we went to Bilbao on a stag do with my friend Luke and my friend Liam, who was the Fulham fan. We lost a lot of weight, and he went in a Clapton shirt.
Right. In that one?
Yeah. Or the previous one, I don't remember what, but we went and we're watching Bilbao play. They won, and at the end of the game, we're coming out, and I'm like, we're walking out with the 40,000 Bilbao fans, and I was like, I recognise that shirt. I was like, Liam, that Spanish guy's wearing a Clapton Community football shirt. And so he runs over to him and speaks no Spanish, and my friend Liam's a cold guy, so he's got his Clapton shirt on, but underneath like 4 or 5 jumpers and shirts. So he's just standing in front of this Spanish guy who's got undressing, taking it's like shirt. I was like, oh god.
And that's the thing, I've been to see him like twice, and they get like, well, the game I went, I think it was like early season cup game or something, but there was like 30 people there. So the idea that they could sell thousands of shirts, just purely based on the design, really, it's really impressive. But again, it just means, what tier are they in? It must be 9th or 10th or 11th tier of English football. It just means anyone who's not doing that needs to pull their fingers out, to be honest.
I want to kind of take it back, and we're going to go right back, and we're just going to look at here. We've got another shirt, which is New Craig Hall, Leith, Victoria.
That's
sponsored by Tenants.
Yeah,
and
I can respect that.
If you were a non-footballing / beer fan, you would say that the shirt has got black sleeves, a kind of golden body, then white shoulders. But in reality, what are we looking at?
It is essentially just a photo of a pint with arms stuck on it. Essentially, I mean,
if there was a beer mascot, so this would be exactly what it looked like, wouldn't it?
I'm kind of glad someone did it. Do you know what I mean? I'm not. I'd never run out and buy that shirt.
You wouldn't.
But it needed to be done. It needed to be done.
It's a slight copy of Deportivo Lugo, who play in the Spanish division. They're sponsored by Estrella.
Yeah.
Especially their 0%ers, and they did one very similar.
Yeah, I feel if you're going to have a beer, you can't have a 0% on there. You've got to have a proper beer.
And then we've got one more, which was something that you...
That's absolutely grotesque, that one, isn't it?
So we're looking at Notts County's 94-96 shirt. And this has got nothing to do with beer other than it's sponsored by Harp Lager. Do you remember Harp Lager?
I never had it. The only time I've seen it in the flesh was I was on a bit of beach in Greenwich on the Thames, and there was a rusted can of Harp Lager there, and I thought, this has been bobbing around for about 35 years.
It's got all the hallmarks of like railway station.
But I've never seen a real live full of beer can of Harp Lager. It's a bit before my time.
And considering it's Notts County, how would you describe that shirt?
It looks, I would say, dad at a barbecue, like a sort of a lower middle class dad with probably taste the different sausages.
We're getting very specific here, aren't we?
No, because did you have it when all the dads suddenly had a polo shirt with Tasmanian Devil on it in the 90s? Do you remember that? Or like Tweety Pie?
Yeah, similar. Yeah.
Is that guy 10 years later? Is what he's wearing? He's on the next trend.
But he's wearing it as his shirt, or
just
polo
like,
shirt.
I'd say it's casual wear. Casual wear. Yeah.
Right. Well, look at that shirt there. It's mad. I hope I'm good at video editing, otherwise it's going to look really, really ridiculous.
Pressure's on.
Right, well, pretty much that's it in regards to football shirts. We got one. There's one that's kind of a company that I'm a big fan of at the moment, which is Tor, the Welsh company that make Llantwit Major shirt, which I'm a big fan of, as we know.
Yeah.
And this is one of the only kind of smaller craft brewery companies, which is Tiny Rebel. It's green, so it fits your suit.
I think that's a decent kit. It's a decent kit. It's maybe, I don't know, it looks a bit sci-fi for my taste, maybe. Is that the right way of putting it?
The only thing I think with this one is I noticed the sponsor more than I noticed the shirt itself.
Yeah.
It's the shirt that it's the sponsor that pulls it through.
And particularly, I've always found that logo for Tiny Rebel really weird. They've always had it since they first appeared on the beer scene. I remember going to a pub and seeing, like, why is there like a one-eyed teddy bear on this fucking beer? It doesn't really make any sense to me. Apparently, I've heard a rumour that they might be getting in trouble about it because now they're getting of a certain size. The advertisers are on them saying it's aimed at children because there's very strict alcohol laws on. Like, that's why you used to have. Is it Hofmeister used to have the bear with the sunglasses?
Yeah.
There was Hooch with the lemon with the sunglasses. You're not allowed to do any of that shit anymore because it seems like it's aimed at children.
That makes sense. That actually makes a lot of sense.
Apparently, I've heard they've been told off about that teddy, or they're talking about it or in discussions about it. So it might change. Which will be great because I think it's really hideous.
And what do you make of this shirt?
I respect what it's doing.
Good. It's my shirt.
Good.
All right, so before we kind of stop, because we're getting cold and it's getting late and it's getting dark, what about some others? So you've already, we've mentioned Carlsberg, but we haven't mentioned, in Scotland there were some big sponsors for
McEwan's, I think.
McEwan's, yeah.
Carling's sponsored. Did Carling sponsor Rangers and Celtic
at the same time?
At the same time. Hey, that's crossing a big divide that very few have done.
Yeah. There was a big thing at the time that actually Wolves were
Only Gazza and Carl's.
Wolves were a really big go-between because there's quite a few players that play for Rangers and Celtic, but through Wolves. So they went from one to the other. And the other. But yeah, McEwan's was a big one because that was Blackburn Rovers as well when they won the league.
Yeah, I'm trying to think what their sponsor was.
I thought that was McEwan's lager when they won the league.
Or was it?
Could be wrong.
It's on the. I'm not sure if it was McEwan's now. It was. Oh God, it's right on the tip of my brain.
Picture here.
That's going to kill me. That's like the era I know best as well.
Yeah, it was McEwan's.
It was McEwan's.
Yeah.
Okay.
Red.
Fair play.
Red, yeah, but it's whited out.
Whited out.
Okay. Yeah, fair play.
Do you remember that thing as well in Europe when teams, I think when they're playing in France, couldn't have alcoholic sponsors?
Yeah.
So teams like Liverpool had to put red tape
really?
over the top of their shirts.
No.
Newcastle did the same as well.
Yeah. Oh, I must have missed that. I mean, yeah, again, it makes sense. It's kind of strange, as much as I produce beer and I like beer, alcohol does get a bit of a free pass compared to a lot of other things. You're like, it's fine, just advertise beer everywhere. You're like, I don't know. It's kind of like, it's very regulated now, which is good. Like, you're not allowed to, even things like, you can't show a man drinking beer on his own in TV adverts anymore. That's why beer adverts are getting more and more abstract because there's so many rules now. You can't really just show people sitting around drinking beer.
God, it's always a school day, isn't it?
Yeah.
I love it. I didn't know that. I don't recall ever seeing a person drink a beer.
Yeah.
But then also,
even in if you watch old TV clips from the 90s, you'll see adverts. You're like, oh, they don't do that anymore.
It's like,
yeah, just like a man at home drinking a beer on the sofa on his own. You just can't do that anymore because I think you're allowed to show people at bars and drinking in groups and stuff like. You can't have someone just drinking on their own, which, I mean, makes sense, I suppose.
But that's literally everybody at the moment during the World Cup.
Yes. Or the last 3 years of lockdown, it's basically clearing out the alcohol cupboard in isolation.
All right, so that's it. We're done. I want to say thank you to Mark for your time.
Thank you.
For the beer. If people want to find you on social medias, where can they find you?
So on the old Insta, I think we're just Mammoth Beer. Facebook, I think we're Mammoth Beer UK. Website's mammothbeer.com. Just Mammoth Beer, Google us, will come up.
Mammoth Beer, not Mammoth Brewery. That I made a mistake. And I am sorry
Beer,
because we're in the brewery.
Yeah.
That's where the mistake came from. But Mammoth Beer.
Easy mistakes, mate.
And you'll recognise their cans. There's some gorgeous little cans. There'll be a link to the shop, and I'm sure if I twist his arm, we can get a little discount for some people.
Absolutely. We'll sort that out.
5-10% off, maybe.
We'll sort that out. Don't you worry.
Sorry,
There'll be a code in the description.
I really threw you under the bus there.
No.
But yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure, and it's been wonderful to catch up with you. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Cheers.
It's my thing that I like my guests to say goodbye. So look at the camera. Say goodbye.
Farewell.